Okay, so we're here in Autodesk 2020. We've already gone through sketching in a part file. We've gone through 3D features in a part file, just the extrude. Okay, and now we're going to go on to assembly. Okay, our strategy here is that we're going to run through how to go all the way through all of the file types first, and then we're going to come back in and get into some more advanced topics in each one of them. Okay, so we're going to do kind of the basics in each file type first and then come back through. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create 3 part files fairly quickly now that we have kind of a basis on how to make them. And then we're going to go in and create an assembly using those part files. First of all, I want to make a point that you're going to have to come up with some kind of file management solution. All right, and what I mean by that is that if you're just starting out and you're not super familiar with Windows or other computers, any computing system, right? Basically, what I want you to do is I want you to put all of your files into one folder and then never move them. Okay, and I'll get into why that is once we get into an assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and call this my project. Project could be anything, right? It could be any project, like, or all the files are going to interrelate to each other, right? If you're going to use one file in another, they all should go in one folder and just leave them there. Okay, don't move them around once they're saved. All right, so we made our project folder. So the very first thing we're going to do that I didn't focus on before is that basically when we first open a file, we're going to immediately save it. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to make a new part file. Nope. Okay, it's loading. Sometimes it takes a second to load. So this machine we're on has 24 gigabytes of RAM and a video card. Okay, so if like an NVIDIA, like a kicked up NVIDIA video card, so you can imagine if you're on a slower machine, you should just be patient. If you try to launch Inventor twice, if you're not patient with it loading and stuff like that, it's just going to cause more problems. Okay, so once you click on it, just wait, have some patience. Wait a couple minutes. All right. Okay, so we're in a part file. We're going to go ahead and make a sketch. Okay, here's our sketch, and see, I already didn't follow my own direction. I forgot to save it, so I'm going to save it now. We can't save in sketch mode. You'll get this all the time. We're just going to go ahead and click OK. That will take us out of sketch mode. And basically in Windows, if I need to locate a document, we use this drop-down menu. So remember, I created my folder on the desktop, which, by the way, is probably not the best place to put it, right? We should probably put it in your documents, which is where this defaults to. Notice it has an Inventor and Inventor server file. They make that's just Inventor's default files. So basically, we do this drop-down and see how desktop is right here. We're going to click on desktop. Here's the project folder I just made, so that's where we're going to save it. I'm going to call this side. And the thing that we're making is called a peg toy. Okay, so I'm going to do peg toy. There's lots of different ways to do naming conventions. Usually, you want to go from general to specific. Okay, in this case, we're going to do name of project and then name of file. Okay, and I'm going to separate it by underscores. That's just the way I do things. You don't want to put a space in your file names. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to do this. I'm going to do a peg toy underscore side. That way it's easy for me to read later on and I don't have to have a space in my file name. In programming, we might go do peg toy side like that, okay, with a lowercase and then camel case after. In my opinion, it's easier to just project underscore file, right? All right, so I go ahead and save it. Notice that it's going to save as an IPT file. The default in Windows, I don't even say IPT file anymore. In Windows, it automatically hides the type of file it is, which is really, really difficult for beginning users. Okay, so if you want to see your file types in Windows, I suggest you go up to, so notice I'm out of Inventor now. I've opened up the folder where I just saved it. If I go to View and I go to Options over here on the right, and I click Change Folder and Search Options. And then I go, follow me along here, I go to View, and then I go, where is it here? Hide extension of known file types. You uncheck this, hide extension of known file types, click OK. And now what I get is I get to see that this is an IPT file. It's very helpful. Okay, so when you're looking through your files, you can actually see, hey, that's an IPT, which is a part file. Okay, and then each file, each different file type will have a different extension. It's very, very useful to know what is what. Okay, so I suggest you change that setting in Windows so that you can see the file type of your files. Okay, I know I promised fastness here, and it hasn't been super fast yet. Okay, so let's get going. So basically, I already created a sketch. Now I've saved it. So this is Peg Toy Side file. I'm going to open up my Sketch 1 again by double-clicking the icon next to Sketch 1. I'm going to go ahead and make a rectangle starting on the origin. So click, move the mouse, click. Then once I have my rectangle, I'm going to go ahead and dimension it. Okay, so my dimensions for this, we're going to go ahead and make it a 3 inches wide. Well, not 30, we're going to make it 3 inches wide. I've switched I was using a trackball, now I'm using a mouse, so I'm going to go ahead and wheel scroll in to zoom, and then I'm going to click down on the wheel to pan. So I just pressed on the wheel. If you're using a wheel mouse to pan, it's much more efficient. And notice that on the wheel, you're zooming to where your mouse is. So if I put the mouse over here, notice I'm zooming to that point. Right, if I put my mouse in the middle of the thing, I'm wheeling back and zooming in the middle wherever the mouse is. Okay, I'm going to dimension the other side. The other side we're going to make it 6 inches, and I'm wheeling out again. Click the mouse and pan, wheeling back in. Okay, so here we have it. I'm going to go finish sketch, and now I'm going to go ahead and extrude. All right, so I have my my closed rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and extrude that, and we're just going to leave it 1 inch. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. All right, so we have our side. Sometimes it's easier just to leave these files open. Okay, you'll notice down on the bottom where it says, down where I'm moving my mouse, we have pegtoyside.ipt right here. We can just go ahead and make a new one. Okay, so go up to the drop down up here and click on Part. Now we have a new part file. We're going to go ahead and save it so it's the correct name. So we click Save. Notice we have pegtoyside. It just opens up to the last folder we are in. So we have pegtoy_side.ipt. We're going to click that just to get our pegtoy. Notice how by clicking it, I kind of copied the name of it down into the line. Okay, so now we're going to call this Top. Okay, Top, and we're going to go ahead and click Save. All right, and the top, basically what we're going to do is we're going to do another sketch. Okay, XY again. And we're going to go ahead and make this a rectangle also, starting on the origin. Okay, we're going to make this, so this is going to fit on the top of it, so I've kind of got it already visualized. You might be working on a specification or something. In this case, we're going to make the side 3 inches. Okay, I'm wheeling out again and panning, clicking the mouse down to pan, or clicking the wheel down to pan. Okay, then I'm going to dimension again. I'm going to make this top 6 inches. Okay. Okay, so here we have it. Now, for our holes in this peg toy that we're going to make, we're basically just going to make a square and a circle. All right. And for this, just to reduce the amount of time for this, we're going to dimension their size, but we're not going to dimension their location. All right. So basically, I have the circle here. I'm going to go ahead and just make a circle, and I'm going to dimension it to be a 1 inch circle. Okay. Then I'm going to make another rectangle. And I'm going to dimension that rectangle. So I get in the dimension tool here, click, move, click, 1 inch. Click, move, click, 1 inch. Okay. And we're just going to leave these wherever they are rather than dimensioning to a particular location. We're going to pretend that our specification just allowed us to put them basically just to eyeball them anywhere. Okay. Finish sketch. All right. Zoom out with the wheel. So I wheeled out. I clicked the wheel to pan right there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude. I'm going to click extrude. I'm going to extrude the space that is not in the holes there. What are now basically just left out areas. They're not holes in quotes for the program, but they're just left out areas. That's it. So we click OK. And so at this point we have some unsaved changes to both files. Just to call out that you can do this, you can go File, and then you can go Save, and you can click Save All. Okay, so if you have a bunch of open files and you want to just save everything at one time, you can go File, Save, and then Save All. Okay. All right, so we have 3 files. We're on our way, so we're going to make yet another file. Okay, and so we're going to go Part, and we're going to create another sketch, and we're going to go ahead and create a circle. We're going to mention that circle. Now, we're kind of in fantasy land here. Okay, obviously, you know, a 1-inch peg, a 1-inch diameter peg cannot fit in a 1-inch diameter hole in reality. Okay, but in, you know, Inventor land, it can. So if you were actually going to fabricate this, you would have to, you know, do some experimentation based upon the fabrication process you're going to use. But here we're just going to make it 1 inch because, hey, we're in Inventor, right? So so we're going to finish sketch, and we're going to extrude. And basically the peg that we're going to make is going to be, let's say it's going to be 3 inches of extrusion. Okay, there we go, and okay. And, oh, I didn't follow my own example, right? I forgot to save it. So we're going to save it now. Click Save. And we're going to peg toy, and then we're going to call this round peg. And save. Okay, so we have our third part. And we're going to do our final part now. We're going to do drop down and part. We're going to make our first sketch. So start 2D sketch. This time we're going to make the square peg. So I went to the rectangle tool, clicked on the origin. I made my rectangle. Now we're going to dimension 2 of the sides to be 1 inch each. 1 and enter. Click to dimension right. Move the mouse. Click to place the dimension. 1 and enter. And now we have our square to extrude. I do finish sketch. Click extrude. There's only one area right to extrude, so Inventor selects it. And we're going to make this a 3-inch extrusion as well. Not 13, whoops, 3 inches. And click enter. You can either click OK or enter. Sometimes using the keyboard's quicker. But didn't work that time. Okay, so I clicked OK. All right, and once again, I forgot to save my part. Do you see why I harped on saving so much? I myself forget to save all the time. So I'm going to save now. You really want to get in a habit of it because it can just cause you a lot of problems later on. So we're going to call this square peg. Notice that by clicking on the other names, you kind of don't have to type all that stuff, and you can just edit the file name because all of your project files are going to be kind of similarly named. All right, so now we have our 4 parts. All right, so now comes the point. We have our parts all made. We got our side, we have our top, we have our round peg, and we have our square peg. Notice I only made one side. That's because you can use the same part many times in an assembly. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and make our assembly. A couple things to understand about an assembly. An assembly doesn't store any information about the part. All it does is says it's a file that basically goes, hey, go get, you know, pegtoyside.ipt, load it, and position it like this, and position it relative to these other parts. That's all it does. So, for example, if I made an assembly file and I put 4 IPTs in it, then saved the assembly, right? And then sometime later I deleted all of the IPTs, all of the part files, right? And I only had the assembly left, that assembly wouldn't be anything. You'd try to open it, you'd just get a lot of errors. Okay, the same thing is true so let me give you a further example. So we're going to go up to the top, we're going to create a new assembly. Okay, and I'm going to save it. And we're going to see we're in project. Notice now how none of the IPTs appear. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this. So basically I'm in an assembly, right? So in Windows, what happens is if I go save right now, see how I'm in project and see how there are IPT files? Windows only shows you the type of file that you're saving as. If I go to all files, see I can see the IPTs now. Okay, but I'm saving this as an assembly, a .iam file, so Windows doesn't, by default, it just doesn't show me the IPTs in there, okay? So if I'm trying to like use my trick of clicking on it to get my file name, it's not going to work, right? So I'm going to call it pegtoy assembly. A lot of times I'll just call the assembly just the name of the project, like pegtoy, if there's only going to be one assembly. if you're going to have, you can put assemblies into assemblies. So if you're going to have sub-assemblies, you'd have to come up with some further naming solution for that, all right? But just to help us for now, I'll put peg toy assembly. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. All right, so back to my example. So basically, I have this assembly, but let's say I added these files, as I'm going to do in a minute, to the assembly. If sometime later I move peg toy round peg out to the desktop, all of a sudden the assembly wouldn't be able to find it. Okay, so when I add things into the assembly, I'm adding them based upon the location in Windows on that machine. Okay, so that's why we want to keep everything right in the same folder. So unless you have a really good reason to make subfolders, and I mean if your project is like upwards over 100 files, okay, anything under 100 files, you should be able to do it just with naming convention, all right? Only when you get to some incredibly large number of files would you start to make subfolders. Okay, that's one man's opinion, having doing a lot of projects. So that's just my suggestion. Use naming convention, not subfolders. Keep everything in one folder. All right. Okay, so we're back to our assembly. All right, so in our assembly, basically we're going to use a couple of very simple commands. Okay, we're going to get everything onto the assembly first, and then we're going to start to place it, or then we're going to start to put things together. So first click Place. Okay, and notice I start out in Documents. I need to go find my thing, right? So my project folder, so we're going to go to the desktop, double-click Project, and I'm going to click Side. Okay, click Open. Okay, now I'm going to wheel out just so you can see. Okay, so that's my side. Okay, I'm going to click. Now I've just put one. Okay, now what I can do is, until I stop, I can just continue clicking and placing additional parts. Okay, so I need two of these sides, so I'm going to go ahead and click again, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to click OK. All right, and so that's it. I've got my two parts now. One I can, and both of them I can move. All right. Okay, that's a change in a couple of versions ago. Inventor made it so the first one wasn't what they call grounded, which we'll go through in a minute. So I was kind of surprised there that we could move both of them. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is place our next component. In this case, we're going to place the top and click Open. So I selected the top, I clicked Open. I'm just going to click once and then right click and OK. All right, for now, we're just going to, since this is our first time, normally we'd put the pegs in too, but since this is our first time, I'm just going to do a couple of them. All right. Or I'm just going to put these initial first shapes in. All right, now the first thing that people want to do in Inventor is they go, hey, how do I turn these around so I can put them together? Okay, that's not how you do it, all right? What you're going to do is you're going to apply constraints to these parts and make them fit together the way you want them, okay? So how we're going to do that is we're going to click Constrain, all right? And we're going to use mainly for this first one, we're just going to use this mate constraint. So I clicked on the constraint tool, and we see here that we have mate. Okay, mate has two versions. It has mate mate and has mate flush. Okay, so if you take your hands out in front of you, okay, if you take your hands out in front of you, okay, and you mate your hands, okay, you're putting them together, your palms together. You're mating your palms together. Okay, if you're sitting here and listening to me, go ahead and mate your palms together. Okay, all right. If you are going to flush your palms, if you were to hold them out in front of you like this, okay, basically one forward and one back, if you were to flush your palms, you would put them even with each other, pointing out away from you. Now those palms are flushed. Okay, flush. So we have mate and we have flush. Okay, it's really important to understand the two. Okay, flush, you're kind of lining things up to be parallel, coplanar. You're making two planes coplanar, right, existing on the same plane. And when you're mating, you're making them, I guess you're also making them coplanar, but you're gluing them together, right? They're kind of in the opposite way you're gluing them together. Wow, that was a really bad explanation. You're making them coplanar in both cases, aren't you? Now I just confused myself. You'll see. Okay. All right, let's get to it. All right, so the first one, so we're going to mate them together, which is basically putting our palms together, right? So we choose the two surfaces that are going to mate. For now, until you know better, okay, you are always going to mate surfaces, not edges. Okay, do not mate edges. Okay, do not go up to an edge and try to mate it. Okay, so basically you're going to go to a surface, okay, you're going to see this upward arrow pointing up. You can kind of see that green arrow there. It's kind of difficult to see. Okay, you can see that green arrow there. You're going to click on it, and it's going to highlight. You need to see that green arrow coming up there, okay? All right, now we're going to go ahead, and this is where this wheel and the mouse comes into real play, okay? So you're going to wheel out, you're going to click the mouse and pan over, and we need to mate this to the bottom side of this, this top, right? So we're going to use the cube to kind of orient it so we can see it, and then we're going to click on the underside of the top. Okay, and we heard our sound, and guess what? I'm just going to tell you that the hardest thing just happened here, okay? So basically what happened here, oh, I flushed them. I didn't mate them, sorry. I accidentally flushed them. You saw what happened. So there's the flush. I should have put a mate. See the difference? That's a flush. Okay, see how it's like. Okay, and this is a mate right here. Okay, so we want to mate them together, and now we're going to go ahead and click apply. Okay, so we basically put them together just like we put our palms together there. All right, let's do the next one. Don't worry, we're going to get a lot of practice. So we clicked the mouse and pulled it down. Okay, next one, we're going to go ahead and flush. Now the top of the side is mated to the bottom of the top, okay? And now we're going to go ahead and flush the sides up, okay? So we're going to choose this side to flush, right? And this side we're going to flush, and we click, and now it's flushed. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? I think it probably does. All right, so we can continue to do constraints. We just click apply after each one, okay? Next one, we're going to keep it on flush, and we're going to flush this side, the side of the top to the side of the bottom. And we hear our nice sound there, and we click apply. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and close this. I could continue with the next part as I am going to in a second, but I want to call out a couple of things, all right? Okay, so we're not going to talk about things being fully constrained here. But in Inventor, you can determine whether something is fully constrained or not, all right? For us as beginners, what we're going to do is we're just going to jiggle the part, okay? So I'm grabbing the part, I'm jiggling it, and notice that the parts are not moving apart. They're staying together as they should, okay? So we're going to give it the jiggle test, all right? So we're going to jiggle it, and basically the parts are staying together. That, for us as beginners, is going to be fully constrained, all right? Okay, the next thing here is we're going to constrain the other part. We're going to do it a little bit more quick, right? Okay, so here we clicked on the constrain tool. We have a mate type here, and it's the mate type below. The first thing we're going to do is basically glue the surfaces together, just like when we put our palms of our hands together, right? Click on the top surface of the bottom, click on the bottom surface of the top, and it's mated together. I go ahead and click apply. All right, you can see sometimes they don't look like they're together. If you use the cube, basically if you click on one of the front, like I'm going to click on the right of the cube here, see how when you I'm going to close the constraint for a second just to illustrate something. So see how now it's mated. I can't pull it apart, but I can, move it side to side. Okay, the same thing is true on the back. So I can't pull it down, but I can move it from side to side. Sometimes when you're doing this, notice that I can move it. Doesn't it look like it's down below the part? Okay, but in fact it's not. Okay, so be careful that the orientation isn't like causing you to see something that's not there. Okay, so these two surfaces are mated together, and if I go back to this right view, you'll see that in fact it's still mated. The surfaces are mated even though they're not touching. Okay, so we go apart, you can see they're not touching anymore, but the surfaces are still mated. All right, so let's get back to constraining. Let's click on this constrain tool. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to flush up the sides, right? So we're going to click the front and the side of the top, and we click apply. And then finally we're going to flush. We're still in the flush tool, right? We're going to click the surface and the other surface, and now it's flush, and we click apply. All right, so there we have the basic constraining of the peg toy. All right, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to constrain the pegs, which is a little bit more tricky. So we're going to go ahead and go place, and we're going to place the square peg and open. Click once, right click OK, place again. We're going to click the peg, round peg this time. Click open, click once, right click OK. All right, the circular peg is actually pretty easy, so we're going to constrain, and you'd think you had to do something more complicated, but you actually are going to constrain the center line of the peg to the center line of the hole. Okay, and that's a thing for cylindrical and circular, cylindrical objects and round holes, right? Okay, so we have mate, and we're going to go ahead in. Notice too, while we're doing this, see this selection right here? Notice that there's a red arrow on first selection in this dialog. Once I click the first one, notice it turns white right here. And then there's a second selection. Inventor has this all over the place. Basically, it kind of clues you into how many things you have to select. In this case, it's 2. So we've selected the center line, and now we're going to go do the center line of the whole. So we clicked on the center line of the whole, and we click Apply. Okay. We could also, we'll get into this later, but okay, so basically now the center lines are constrained. We don't constrain because it's a peg. We want to show motion, right? We don't constrain it up or down, right? We're going to do the same thing with we're going to click constrain again. We're going to do the same thing with the square peg. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mate the side of the peg to the side of the hole. Okay, so there's the side of the hole, and click Apply. Okay, in this case, we have to take the peg back out so that we can actually get it mated to the other one. All right, so we're going to click constrain again. We just kind of moved out the peg, and we're going to mate the side of the peg, turn it down, and we're going to mate it to the side of the hole, and click Apply. Okay, so once we have that done, we basically have the toy fully constrained. Notice the places where we want to still have motion, we still have motion. In the areas where we don't want to, we can give the jiggle test and notice that nothing comes apart. Okay, so there we have basic constraints, and best of luck, guys.